little wobbly. I have a double fracture in my shoulder. and so, and we just got over the flu. So I'm not very steady on my feet, but it's not stopping me. You know, I'm here. I'm sorry? No, I'm good. I'm good. First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here, for coming to hear about this amazing topic. And a special thanks, of course, to the teams and the producers that brought us all together. I mean, I just want to say that I think this is the most important issue that I've ever worked on in my entire life. And I've been doing this for 50 years. Yeah, no, really. This is a big one. And it's complex, many-layered, confusing, and profoundly potentiated to change human history in many, many ways. So, I mean, it's just sort of mind-blowing if you want to know. I mean, I don't have a long history with this. Danny does, and it'll be wonderful when he talks, because he'll be able to give you more detail and what his history is with this issue. But as a person who kind of dived in a year ago when the whistleblowers started saying that, yeah, we do have crash retrievals, and we've had them for a while, and we're back engineering, and we've got bodies, and all of that started coming out, and we decided that the Institute would move in behind Danny, who's been involved in this movement for 47 years. But we just didn't do it, we weren't doing it as an organization, because we thought it would endanger, actually, all the other work we were doing, because, tinfoil hats, the whole thing. But when they started testifying to Congress, and Congress started admitting all this, it was like, oh, we need to move in behind Danny, and we need to go. This is go time. And these are secrets that have been held for 80 years, and sometimes in very dangerous and vicious ways. So, we're not surprised by any of that, because we've already done other campaigns like that. But so I've realized very quickly, as we moved out front, we're on the front lines of this issue, that there really wasn't another organization in the movement that was an action organization. And we are an action organization. We're faith-based, we're a spiritual people, but we are dedicated to having an impact and having something change, having it matter. And so I looked around, there wasn't anybody really doing that. They're wonderful people. The MUFON has been doing investigative work, amateur investigative work all over the place, all over the country. Very, very good. All kinds of good people, researchers, everything. But there wasn't an action organization. So we went just like a shot out of a gun, and went as fast as we possibly could to put together all the different parts of an action program. The organizing, the educating, a new website, an action component in it, the press campaigns, and even a university where you can now get ET studies. We're partnering with them. So I mean, it's global. One of our people is working with several countries who now want to pass laws like we did to have disclosure. And so what I want to say is, the bottom line is we have got to find out what the truth is about this. Why? Because it could give us new forms of energy that address the climate crisis. It could give us new forms of energy so that we are no longer not only using fossil fuels, but we're no longer using even solar and wind. We can go beyond that. These folks, whoever they are, we're not completely sure about that yet, but they have technology that is mind-blowing. And that results in two things in terms of our situation. One is the military guys are tearing their hair out because it's a national security threat. They don't know what to do about it. And they know if these folks would ever turn their attention to hurting us or taking over our planet, they could do it. For a lot of reasons. And not only do they have the technology, but they have the ability to make us, sort of freeze and not be able to move. And they are way beyond us in terms of working with the frequencies of the field that we all live in, and some of us have more or less experience with it, particularly spiritual people. But they're working with it. They are it. It's not something they talk about or learn about. They do it. They're the field in motion. Their vehicles can do things that are just unbelievable. Okay, so we have that situation where we have a lot of people afraid, and even the new book Imminent is emphasizing how the threat. But the other part that I want to leave you with is there's this other really beautiful part that's very spiritual. Because yes, we've got crash retrievals, we've got bodies, we've had them, we've been doing back engineering, all that's true. It's also true that there are many people who have been abducted and taken onto the ships. They're called experiencers. And they're terrified, and it's just traumatic and the whole thing like that. But we know this from our dear, dear friend John Mack, whom Danny will talk about, that those people often evolve into having very deep, profound feelings of appreciation and love that they have anything to do with these folks. Their experience with these folks is one of their consciousness growing onto new plateaus and new understandings, and not only of who we are in the universe, but who Source is. What is all oneness? What does it mean for everybody to be all one? How does it experience? What does it feel like? John wrote a book called A Passage to the Cosmos, which I'm in the middle of right now, that is about that. It's about how so many experiencers that he was working with were actually profoundly, positively affected by their interaction with these beings. It took them to whole new places of love and interconnection and consciousness that they couldn't get any other way. They couldn't get there any other way. And they actually feel bad when they come back. They'd like to go hang out some more. So you have this interesting situation where you have a lot of people afraid, security threat, and then you have this other thing happening. And my position simply is we need to know. First, we have existential threats going on, nuclear, climate. 2 more minutes. We have nuclear, climate, etc. I mean, we're in a really tough situation, and we don't want to leave the young people. We're a multi-generational organization, so we have 3 generations now, and we're going to have a 4th. But the thing is, we don't want to leave this planet worse than we found it. And so we're going to give it everything we've got. And for those of you who know our history, maybe you know, if we tell you we're going to find out what it is, we'll find out what it is. And we'll tell you what it is. In DC, they used to go crazy when we were doing the Iran-Contra case because they would say, don't tell those people anything because they'll tell everybody. And yes, yeah, and I mean, they wanted to keep everything in the Beltway, just among the people in the Beltway. Don't tell the public, don't tell the public. And so that's our dedication, is to uncover secrets that are unjust, that are criminal, that are, corrupt, and are hurting the people, to tell the people what they are, and to work on positive solutions to solve those problems in policy, in law, in organizing and educating. So, and that applies right now to this issue in many, many ways. So what now I want to say about Danny is, I've been with Danny for 47 years. We've done all these campaigns together, and I mean, he has a sixth sense for investigative work and for discerning patterns and for figuring out what's really going on and then figuring out what the solution to that could be. It's really, really noticeable. But let's just look at the practical facts. We met in the Karen Silkwood case. The Karen Silkwood case became a big national campaign. We were working night and day in all different ways. But the core of it is always the investigation and the litigation, which is run by Danny. And so we uncovered all this information. Eventually, we even knew who killed her, which was the security company of Kerr-McGee. And the result of the trial, which was a very long trial, was that there were no more nuclear power plants, private ones, built for 40 years, 40-some years. That's impact. That's impact. The Greensboro case down in North Carolina, the killing of all the people working with the unionists and stuff in the textile mills. Those deaths you see on television, there was a federal trial, let them all go. State trial, let them all go. We came in with a civil trial, and Danny was doing a lot of the investigative work and figuring out the strategies, etc. It prosecuted the Klan and the Nazis for the first time successfully in the state of North Carolina. The Eddie Carthan case down in Mississippi, they accused him of murder, first black mayor since Reconstruction, doing a great job of being a mayor. The white power structure wanted him out of there, and so they accused him of murder that he did not do. Danny ran an investigation with a really tough nun and an African-American former cop, and it was an incredible investigation, and they figured out who really did the murder that was being blamed on Eddie, and eventually on the stand broke the guys that did it. And they admitted it on the stand. So not only was Eddie Carthan released from prison, but also the people who did it were caught. So it's really, okay, that was that one. And then we did the first sanctuary defense case down in Texas that prosecuted the Reagan administration for not giving asylum to people who were fleeing for their lives. It was one on appeal on Danny's arguments, and that led to the Iran-Contra scandal. Now, the Iran-Contra case was a gigantic investigation and very dangerous. There, we were suing assassination, people who were assassinating people. We were former generals, etc. And that case is completely instructive to us for how to do this work. I mean, it's the same kind of hidden stuff, people hiding, people killing people to keep them quiet, all of that going on there. So we have that experience, and then of course later the Lakota case, actually, when Danny was representing Chief Chase Iron Eyes in the Dakotas, Danny uncovered the Tiger Swan outfit up there in the Dakotas, which was an offshoot of Blackwater. And for the first time, he exposed the fact that the Blackwater people were in our country targeting our citizens. They'd been over in the Middle East doing it, which was bad enough, but now they were targeting our people and creating situations where there were tons of people being arrested, tons of people being hurt, lots of violence, big equipment to hurt people, etc. So look, I'm just telling you this because if he tells you that he can figure out how to do this and figure out what's real and what isn't, he can. He can. I invite all of you to become part of this movement. We cannot do this alone. We can only do this with a growing movement, which we've had in the other campaigns, and we're going to have that now too. So keep thinking about how you want to participate.
Chris, we got this up? Okay. I guess that was an introduction. And so that, what? Oh, we got a short video. Okay, I guess it wasn't an introduction. Okay.
The United States has been involved in the recovery of objects, vehicles of unknown origin that are neither from our country or any other foreign country that we're aware of.
Aliens, non-human intelligences are real, and they have been engaging with humanity.
We're not alone. We are not alone in this universe, and it is a simple fact, and the US government has been aware of that fact now for decades.
Non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that.
For decades, the truth has been hidden. A cosmic Watergate has withheld from humanity the fact that we are not alone in the universe. But tonight, here in Santa Cruz, California, we gather to uncover it. The fight for UFO and UAP transparency is here. Danny Sheehan, leading the charge, brings you the latest from the front lines of disclosure. A movement that could reshape humanity's understanding of the universe. And as we step into the unknown, prepare to be transported by the visionary sound of Schlump. Bass so deep, it echoes through the cosmos. Welcome to the Intergalactic Gathering.
All right. So, how did a group that has been known to many of you here and not known at all to a lot of the younger folks here get involved in a strange subject like this? It turns out that Sarah and I got together back in 1976 or so, when I was at the Jesuit headquarters in Washington, D.C. Sarah was the National Labor Secretary for the National Organization for Women, and they were working on the Soakwood case, trying to figure out who murdered Karen Soakwood out in Oklahoma. And they contacted me to see if I would be the trial lawyer to run the investigation and do the litigation against the Kerr-McGee Nuclear Corporation. While I was there at Jesuit headquarters, we were working on figuring out public policy positions for the largest order inside the Catholic Church, working with the other 54 major religious institutions in the country who had national offices in Washington, D.C. And we set up a Washington alliance among all 54 of the major national offices there to set up task forces to work on different subjects: nuclear disarmament, economic justice, racial justice, food policy around the world, etc. And we were working away at those policies, and one of them, of course, was the issue of nuclear weapons and nuclear power. We knew at Jesuit headquarters that one of the major reasons for trying to generate this private nuclear industry was so that the United States could continue to make nuclear weapons material. As you probably, well, most of you don't remember because you weren't born then, but the bottom line is at the end of World War II, when the United States dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the whole world recoiled in horror. And said that this is a horrendous weapon. It's obviously designed to annihilate citizens, the civilians. It's not a proper weapon of war at all, to the extent to which there are any. And it was a major movement to try to outlaw nuclear weapons in the same way that mustard gas had been prohibited at the end of World War I. And so the United States, under the Truman administration, started working diligently to figure out some kind of a covert program by means of which they could rationalize the continuation of the production of nuclear materials for the nuclear weapons. And so they came up with this brainstorm that they would pretend that you could generate electricity safely with this and efficiently, and that they would offer to the world free electricity. That was the whole point of it. So that we had discovered this at Jesuit headquarters. We realized, working with the Institute for Policy Studies and the Environmental Policy Center, we discovered the internal government documents that showed that this was basically a covert conspiracy on the part of the United States executive branch to pretend that they could really generate electricity safely and inexpensively with nuclear power, but they couldn't. So the bottom line is that was the nexus, the connection that existed that generated this interesting alliance between the United States Jesuit headquarters on the one hand and the National Organization for Women on the other hand, where Sarah and the people in now were attempting to dig in and find out who had murdered this young female labor activist out in Oklahoma. And so that's how we got started. And when we ended up winning the $10.5 million judgment against the Kerr-McGee Nuclear Corporation, the largest civil judgment in the entire history of the United States at that point in time, and shutting down the Kerr-McGee Nuclear Power Reprocessing Plant. The Kerr-McGee facility was not just a nuclear power plant. It was instead a reprocessing plant that was attempting to gather all of the waste material from the 103 private nuclear power stations around the country, the expended material, and reprocess it so they could make more and more nuclear waste material, more and more material for the power corporations. Okay? But what they were doing is they were smuggling 98% pure bomb-grade plutonium out of the facility to bring to Israel to create nuclear weapons, and Iran at the same time. That's what we discovered. That's what Karen Silkwood had walked on to the top of, and that's why they murdered her, because she was on her way to deliver the internal documents from the Kerr-McGee Corporation that would reveal to the New York Times that David Burnham was waiting for her at the hotel. So they ran her off the road and killed her and took her documents away. So that was how it started with us, with the Christic Institute, with Sarah and ourselves, the National Organization for Women and the Jesuit office. And so when we got done with that case, everybody said, please don't stop. Don't disband the organization that you've put together that has gotten to the bottom of the Silkwood case and has stopped the private nuclear power industry from expanding any farther. And so we continue to do additional cases, some of which Sarah has pointed out. The Greensboro case, the Carthain case, we did the 3 Mile Island case. We're the ones that did the 3 Mile Island litigation to stop them from pumping the great waste materials from the radioactive core into the Susquehanna River. We did one case after another. And so we were extraordinarily busy. We were taken up in doing a lot of these cases that you've all heard about now. But at the same time, when I was at Jesuit headquarters, what happened is that all of a sudden I got contacted right after President Carter won the election in 1976. On November 4th of 1976, President Carter gets elected, and the first thing that he did was he sent to have the CIA director sent down to Plains, Georgia, to his home, before he even left to go into Washington, D.C., and demanded that the CIA director come and brief him on the UFO issue and what its connection was to the extraterrestrial civilization, if there was one. Turns out the CIA director at that time was George H.W. Bush, who had been appointed by Gerald Ford, who had taken over after the resignation of Richard Nixon. Okay, this was the nature of those particular times where things were in kind of upheaval. But that when President-elect Carter ordered the CIA director to come down and brief him on the UFO issue, George Bush Sr. refused to brief him, saying that as President of the United States, he had no need to know that information. And President Carter, rather than take on the entire Central Intelligence Agency and spend valuable political capital that he had gained in the election, what he did instead is he contacted Congress, and he told Congress that he was being denied the information, and he asked Congress to contact the Congressional Research Service and to have the Congressional Research Service do a major investigation and research project to ascertain what kind of documentation we had within the United States government record to show what information we had about UFOs and any extraterrestrial civilizations that may have been responsible for them. That's when I got contacted. I got contacted by Dr. Marsha Smith, who was the head of the Science and Technology Division of the Congressional Research Service. She contacted me and asked if I would become special counsel to the investigation. Specifically, she wanted to know if I could get in contact with the Vatican through the Jesuit order in the Catholic Church to find out what the Vatican had in there about UFOs and the extraterrestrial civilization. So I became general counsel, special counsel to that investigation. And in that context, I actually secured access to the classified portions of Project Blue Book. Now, Project Blue Book was an investigation that was conducted between 1952 and 1967 by the United States Air Force. People can come on in up here if you want. Keep on coming in. There's some more room up here, and you can sit along the aisles where you're not blocking people coming in and out. Okay, so the bottom line is that when I got to see the classified portions of Project Blue Book, I saw photographs of an actual UFO crash retrieval undertaking going on. So I knew that this was real, and I traced out copies of the crash saucer and the symbols that were on the saucer, brought them back to Jesuit headquarters, provided them to Father William Davis, who was my superior at Jesuit headquarters at the time, and he ended up taking a photograph out of his desk and showing it to me of another UFO, which he had actually gotten from his brother-in-law, who was in fact the chief air traffic controller at the Seattle airport. Okay, and so we were off and running in looking into this UFO issue, and I ended up with Father Davis going to all 54 of the top religious denominations in the country and proposing that they set up a task force to actually look into what the theological and philosophical implications were for our encounter with an extraterrestrial civilization. Well, it turns out that I was asked by Dr. Marsha Smith to brief the top 50 scientists at SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory up in Pasadena. And so I went there and briefed them on the theological implications of this. And I began to dig in and do research at the Jesuit headquarters about this particular issue. It was later on that I was then contacted by Dr. John Mack. Dr. John Mack was the head of the Department of Clinical Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. And it turns out that a policy had been adopted by the United States Defense Department and the Central Intelligence Agency. And that is if any government officer, military officer, or anyone else attempted to file an official notice of an encounter with a UFO, that the first thing that was done is they were ordered to go get a psychiatric exam. This was a mechanism that they had designed because they were asserting that if you're going to be making an extraordinary claim like this, one of the first things we have to do to help you of course, is to prove that you're not crazy. But of course, this was not a career builder to have in your record. Okay, and so, but John Mack happened to be the chairman of the Department of Clinical Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, so he is the one to whom they sent a number of these officers. Now, after a handful of these officers, and his having interviewed them and gotten into great detail, doing an evaluation of their psychological stability, etc., he became convinced that they were within normal parameters of being normal people, and yet they were making these extraordinary claims about having encountered not only the UFO vehicles, but actually in some instances having encountered beings that were piloting these craft that were non-human. So John went actually and started inquiring deeper into this and got to meet more and more people who were having these kind of experiences, and he ended up interviewing over 100 people whom he vetted to figure out the core handful of these people that he thought were beyond any dispute at all that had this experience. And then he wrote a paper. He wrote a scientific paper for the New England Journal of Medicine, the premier medical journal to have their records peer reviewed. So he wrote the article, submitted it to the New England Journal of Medicine, and within a short period of time, they sent the article back to him and said they weren't going to publish it. So he said, this is troublesome. What I'll do is I'll dig in, I'll do more footnotes, I'll do a little deeper research on it, make it more scientific, and I'll send it back to the New England Journal of Medicine, which he did. Within 2 days, the executive secretary for the publisher, the editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, is standing in John's office with the envelope unopened and said, you know, I've been instructed by the editor-in-chief of Mr. Relman, Dr. Relman, to come back and give you the envelope and point out to you that it has not been opened. Because we're not only going to not publish this, we're not even going to read it. Okay? And John got so upset about this that he contacted a publisher because he had already won the Pulitzer Prize for writing the definitive psychobiography of T.E. Lawrence of Arabia. And he therefore contacted a publisher and got the paper published, and it came out. And the publishers named the book Abductions, Contact with Extraterrestrial Aliens. Okay? So the bottom line is he got dragged up in front of a faculty committee that were actually threatening to revoke his tenure for failure to follow responsible research guidelines. You know, it was just a sham. They were just embarrassed that he was, in fact, he ended up going on Oprah Winfrey in her shows talking about this extraordinary experience that these people were having. So when they dragged him up in front of this tribunal, all of a sudden, the dean of the medical school came to see John and said, John, I noticed that your book is out now, and you know, I'd like to kind of have you come in and talk with some of us on the faculty about the book. It's kind of really interesting. John shows up for the meeting, and it turns out that they're arraigned in this tribunal, you know, with Dr. Relman, the editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, chairing the tribunal, along with the president, the dean of the medical school, and legal counsel for Harvard University, and a handful of faculty people. And they were all there, and they started excoriating him for what he had done, and how he was embarrassing Harvard University for daring to suggest that somehow these people were having a real encounter with extraterrestrial beings. So John ended up contacting his best friend, Ron Robertson, who was the head of the art department down in Santa Barbara, at Santa Barbara City College. And he called me and asked me if I would be willing to accept a telephone call from his best friend, John Mack, and consider representing him, which I did. And John flew me back to Cambridge. I went in front of the tribunal, and when I confronted the tribunal, I said, look, it's not clear what the nature of this tribunal is. This is not an AAUP, you know, Association of University Professors convened tribunal. You know, it's clear it's not, but I don't know what it is you're trying to do here. And so what I said is, and here's Relman, who'd rejected his article, sitting as the chair, says, well, what happened here is that when Dr. Mack published this book, the dean, Tolson, of the medical school, sitting here on my right, started receiving a lot of phone calls and asking him lots of questions about the book. And he found himself unable to answer those questions. So he thought he would just have Dr. Mack invited in to have a conversation with him about this. And as long as he was doing it, he thought he'd have a few other faculty members happen to be coming in. Now, here they are sitting as a tribunal, right? And I said, well, okay, excuse me. I said, then look, in the spirit of cooperation on this, in order to try to help you in this, can you tell me, who is it that called? All of a sudden, there was this complete dead silence all over the whole room. And they all started looking at each other like this. And finally, the legal counsel shook her head no, like that. And Brumman says, no, I'm sorry, we're not at liberty to discuss that. So I said, well, then, okay, if the whole point of this is trying to figure out how to assist Tolson in getting the answers, can you tell me, what were the questions that they asked? Another big, long, dead silence falls over the room. They said, no, I'm sorry, we're not at liberty to discuss that either. So I said, well, then look, let me ask this. All of this is in the spirit of cooperation with you, but can you tell me, is it, whatever the nature of this hearing process is, can you tell me whether either one or both of the following fact questions are going to be at issue? Number one, whether an extraterrestrial civilization exists. And secondly, whether or not at least some of these UFO vehicles might actually be a craft coming from an extraterrestrial civilization. And Dr. Rahman said, well, absolutely those two questions are going to be at issue, and it's completely ridiculous to think that either one of those things is true. Now, this is Harvard University in 1994, just asserting that it's absolutely ridiculous to think that there's actually life elsewhere in the universe, and that any one of the UFOs might actually be a vehicle from such a location. So I said to him, oh, well, good, then I think I should tell you in the spirit of fairness here, is that John Mack and I just spent the weekend with Lawrence Rockefeller, and Lawrence Rockefeller has agreed to finance a grand rounds here at Harvard University on the issue of UFOs. We will bring in, military officers, we'll bring in investigators from the Federal Aviation Agency, we'll bring in police officers, we'll bring in teachers from around the country, we'll bring in experts, and the legal counsel for Harvard University leaps to her feet and she says, absolutely not. We're not going to have this procedure turned into some kind of a circus. And so I proceeded to go out and start to interview, under the auspices of Dr. John Mack, the head of the clinical psychiatry department at Harvard University. I began to go around with a letter of introduction from him to meet with people who could be witnesses to Harvard University. That was the context in which I got to meet virtually every one of the major researchers on the UFO issue in the world. And when we ended up winning, and Harvard University backed off and said, no, we aren't going to go through this whole process. What they're going to give up. What John did is John organized a thing called the Project for Extraordinary Experience Research, the peer group there in Cambridge, in Massachusetts. And that numbers of people came together who had had experiences like this. Part of my job was to vet these people, to interview them, to determine the credibility of these people, etc. Subsequent to that, I was contacted by Dr. Stephen Greer to become legal counsel for the Disclosure Project for 20 years. I was then contacted by Stephen Bassett to become legal counsel for the citizens' hearings on disclosure. Excuse me. And more recently, I've been contacted by Lou Elizondo, whom you just saw here. Lou Elizondo turns out to be was the director of the top secret program inside the Pentagon, investigating the UFO phenomenon. Okay, that's how I got to meet the more current people involved, all the people deep into the national security state, excuse me, who are knowledgeable about all this. What I want to do in the time that I have remaining, there will be a Q&A session following a brief presentation more that Sarah's going to make. But the bottom line is, what I want to do is I want to share with you some of the explicit facts that we now know about the UFO phenomenon in this ET phenomenon. Okay, number one, it turns out that, much to no one's surprise here, that there are in fact other planets. It turns out that that until like 20 years ago, the entire scientific community refused to acknowledge that there were any other planets in the universe outside of our solar system. Why is that? Because they couldn't see them. And they said, well, if you can't see it and weigh it and touch it and smell it, then it functionally doesn't exist. And so until we do know that they're going to just pretend they're not there. And so they actually took the position that as far as science was concerned, the planets inside our solar system were the only planets. And then they said, well, of course they don't have any life, or else we'd know it. All right? So the bottom line is, it turns out that lo and behold, there are other planets. We now know, not only from the Hubble, but from the James Webb Telescope, there are tens of thousands of millions of billions of other planets. It turns out that virtually every one of the 500 billion star systems just inside our own galaxy, that virtually every single one of the stars has planets. And over 20 or 25% of them, they estimate, have planets that are in the so-called Goldilocks zone, which is where it's not too hot and it's not too cold, like the porridge in Goldilocks. And therefore, they are rock solid planets. They're not just gaseous planets, so that they can actually generate and potentially sustain life. So we know that to be true now. Okay, so we start out with that premise. Number two, it turns out that we know that there are at least, thank you, there are at least 5 of the highly intelligent, highly technologically developed, but distinctly non-human species who are in fact coming and going from our planet. That's of course the big one. That's the one that they don't want to acknowledge now. And it turns out that there have been consistent and regular sightings of them, and radar readings of them, photographs being taken of them, etc., ever since mid-1945. And why in mid-1945? It was because they started gathering these UFOs around the Trinity site, where we detonated the first atomic bomb. This is before the actual dropping of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Colonel Philip Corso, who was just a captain at that time, had a direct physical sighting and encounter with a UFO that landed on the ground at Trinity site in July of 1945. I'll put this somewhere here, but the bottom line is that now the question is, how do we know that? How do we know that happened? Well, primarily because I have seen the 8mm black and white home movie that he produced of himself telling his grandchildren after he was dead about what happened. He wasn't going to go to his grave without revealing to his grandchildren what had happened at that point, about how he had been, he'd gone off to have lunch. He'd gone off into the hills away from Yucca Flats, where we were doing the preparing of the Trinity site, where they were going to detonate the first atomic bomb in a place called Alamogordo, which translates, not ironically, as the valley on the journey to death. That's where we were doing the experiment. Okay, and that he ended up going out for lunch to go up the hills, took a Jeep, went up in the hills, and there was a UFO sitting on the ground. And they had somehow run into all the high intense radar around the facility around White Sands where they were going to do the detonation, and it had somehow caused them to have to force land. And so he encountered them, and he actually saw the beings get off the craft and communicate to him telepathically, pleading with him if he could possibly exercise some kind of authority to go and turn off whatever this is that was happening here with all this radar to allow them to escape. And he actually did it. He actually went back and said, look, let's test the radar system, let's turn it off for a minute or two. And he did, and they fled. Okay, that was back in July of 1945. Now, very importantly, I would assume that virtually everybody in the room here, including some of the younger folks, have heard about Roswell, New Mexico. This is in July 8th of 1947. This is 2 years later when a vehicle crashed there at Roswell outside of the 509th Bomber Group. And why were they there? The 509th was the only place in the world that had nuclear weapons at that point. This is the home base of the Enola Gay that dropped the 2 bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And this is where they had the remaining nuclear bombs, atomic bombs at that point, by 1947. And this is the place where the crash occurred. Now, the United States Air Force has lied profoundly about this incident, but the reality is that how do we know that it happened there? Other than our having talked to, almost 100 people who were there, who saw the bodies, who helped recover the debris, etc., who helped manufacture the fake case of pretending that it was weather balloon. But the most definitive of them is, the fact is that when they tried to pretend that it was a weather balloon that crashed, General Ramey, who was the commander of the 8th Air Force, U.S. Army Air Force group, ordered the local newspaper to send a photographer in the middle of the night after they'd issued a public press statement that they'd recovered a UFO. He wanted to scotch that story. So what he did is he ordered them to send their photographer in at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they've got this famous, now infamous, photograph of General Ramey kneeling on the ground next to this weather balloon debris. And it turns out that he held in his hand a telegram that he had in his hand. He had this cable in his hand. And as soon as I saw the photograph one time, I said, someday we may have the technology to be able to blow up that photograph. It turns out that in 1994, when I was at the International UFO Congress in Laughlin, Nevada, I was delivering an update on the John Mack case, and a young man came up out of the audience and asked to see me, and it turns out he had found the photographer who actually took that photograph in Roswell on the night of July 9th of 1947. And he said, so I said, look, go and confirm that that's the guy. If it is, see if he possibly had kept a copy of the negatives of that. And I said, if he did, we can put together the financing, we can organize this, and we can get those digitized and blown up, which we have done. And what it says on the cable, you can read the cable, where it says, take the disc to right field and bring the bodies of the victims. That's not a weather balloon. Okay? And so we now have that definitive written proof of the lies that they told about this. And it turns out that what had happened is immediately after the Roswell crash in July of 1947, then President Truman convened a special secret group of people that he put together outside of the constitutional frameworks of our government. Did not notify Congress about it, did not notify the State Department about it, did not notify the official Defense Department. What he did instead is he set up a private group, a little trust of a special kind, to coordinate keeping this secret. And he called it the Majestic Group. And there were 12 people in this, and it's now become known as Majestic 12, MJ 12. That's the group that was originally put together. And what we've discovered now, because I was contacted by Lou Elizondo, as you've seen here, who was the director of the top secret program inside the Pentagon on this whole UFO issue. I've met with and talked with people who have made it very perfectly clear now that we know that particular group, that Majestic MJ12 group, has been engaged in a criminal process for now the last 77 years, where they've been criminally suppressing this information and hiding the information and threatening and intimidating people. They're threatening to kill people if they talked about it. And we're not talking just about the government people inside who have taken security oaths to conceal the information. We're talking about American citizens who happen to come into contact with a UFO, and they're threatened by this group, and they're threatened to actually be killed, them and their families, if they talk. This is the lengths to which they were going to keep this secret. Now the question you ask is, why would they want to keep it secret? Why wouldn't they tell the world about this extraordinary discovery that there was an extraterrestrial civilization and that they had actually figured out superluminal flight, and that they had alternative sources of energy that we might be able to have access to? The answer to that is that the people at the highest levels of the executive branch, they wanted to keep the secret so they could develop the technology as a weapon. They wanted to be able to have the superluminal flight secrecy so they could design aircraft that could fly faster and at higher maneuverability than any of their opponents. They wanted to have the alternative source of energy so that they could keep it for themselves for providing energy to their weapon systems. Excuse me. And the bottom line is they began this process during the period of the Cold War, and they just carried it on. And they carried it on, and it got deeper and darker. They went to greater and greater lengths to punish people, to keep the secret. And they then passed it on. They had progeny to the MJ12 group. When a person got too old and retired or died, they would replace them with someone else. Thank you, Chris. And what we've discovered is that not only did they establish a super secret crash retrieval program where they had a whole unit set up to go anywhere in the world at a moment's notice to recover any crashed UFO, but in fact they began a program to violently bring down UFOs, to actually engage them and try to knock them out of the sky so they could capture their technology rather than have to recover it in a crash debris. All right, and so they started doing this, and what's happened is they've developed an entire criminal enterprise around this entire thing, and they've reached out to private aerospace corporations like Lockheed Martin, like Grumman. What they've done is they have put some of this technology into their hands to offer them the option of being able to get some patents on derivative technology from these, but they would keep the major technology secret and give it over to the government so our government could use it to design weapon systems. That's what we've discovered. So that this is sort of the bottom line prosaic message that I wanted to give to you. But the question that arises is, what are we going to do about this? And what is anybody doing about it right now? Why is it that this has come up more recently? Because people have heard about this issue for some time now. It's been bubbling around, and there are 1,000 books on it, 100 books on Roswell. But the bottom line is that what's happened is all of a sudden, back in 2017, the New York Times comes up with a front page New York Times story revealing the existence of this above top secret program going on inside the Pentagon, while the United States Defense Department is openly lying to everybody, lying not only to people in the United States, but lying to Congress, actually under oath, asserting to Congress falsely that there is no such program, they don't know what you're talking about. And they were maintaining, as you recall, that UFOs weren't even real. that UFOs aren't real. You know, they're flocks of birds that you're misidentifying. You know, that they're searchlights, you know, shining off the bottom of cloud formations, and you're thinking that they're craft. You know, and they come up with all of these ridiculous arguments. But the fact of the matter is, up until after the publication of the revelation of this a secret group doing the studying of it inside the Pentagon, the official position of the Defense Department is the UFOs aren't even real. And anybody who thinks that they're real is mentally ill. You know, and that they ought to have their head examined. You know, and they definitely should be not given a security clearance, and they shouldn't be hired by any government agency, and they shouldn't be hired by any private corporation either. You know, they were engaged in this very aggressive program of suppressing anybody that tried to assert the reality of the UFO phenomenon. But at the same time, of course, we have all these stories going on about tens of thousands of people reporting that a UFO came down over their farmhouse, you know, and that it landed in their field, and that they were abducted and carried over into the craft. And what we've discovered is what's been going on here. What's been going on is that there are 5 of these species. There's what they call the short grays. There are the tall grays, which is sometimes called the tall whites. There are the reptilians, and there's this insectoid species that they call the mantis people, because they look like praying mantises. They're like almost 7 feet tall, extraordinarily skinny, who always appear to be in charge. The mantis people, whenever they appear with other species, always seem to be the ones giving directions to them. Okay, and then there's this other one, it's a very problematic one, about allegedly from the Pleiades, of a species that looks virtually identical to us. That's very problematic. That's very problematic, because the minute you broach that particular subject, you start getting into this whole discussion about, are we related to them? Are they us from the future? You know, are we of the same genetic source than they? You know, you get the movie Prometheus, etc. The bottom line is, however, there are these other 4 species that are absolutely not human. That's for sure. Okay, and that number one, and what's happening is that these species are engaged in abducting human beings, and a number of the women who have been abducted have their egg cells involuntarily removed, and their 24 chromosome egg cells are in fact genetically spliced together with 24 chromosomes of the DNA from the extraterrestrial species, and is put together into a 48 chromosome zygote, which is implanted in the uterus of the woman, and then she, after the abduction experience, suddenly discovers herself being pregnant, even though some of them haven't been with a man for over a year. And all of a sudden they're totally baffled at how this conceivably happened. And then the bottom line is after the first trimester, they carry the child to the end of the first trimester, and all of a sudden they're abducted again. And they come back from the second abduction, and they're not pregnant anymore. And there's all kinds of medical records proving that this is happening. And that it's now become evident that there is, in fact, a conscious program going on, pursuant to which at least 4 of these species are engaged in a collective, cooperative process, by means of which there are hybrid children being generated. All right? This is true. Okay? It is true. And the reality is that this element inside the United States government knows that this is true. And they're lying. They're lying to us, they're lying to Congress, and we have effectively now persuaded major members of the United States Senate that this is happening. We have put together some 40 whistleblowers who have come and testified under oath to the United States Senate Intelligence Committee, who have provided evidence that we are in possession of non-human origin extraterrestrial spacecraft and that there's a conscious back engineering program going on, trying to back engineer these to develop weapons without the knowledge of Congress, without any oversight of Congress, and in complete defiance of Congress, in fact. So we've got a situation that is very similar to what happened in Iran-Contra, where you have the Congress being lied to by a deep covert operation inside the executive agency, thinking that they can get away with this. And so that we ended up being called by Luis Elizondo, who's the head of the project inside the Pentagon, who has decided that he's had enough of this, that we need to reveal this to the people. We've convinced a number of the senators. We've gotten the United States Senate to pass a 64-page law to set up a 9-person panel to order all 6 of the United States military services, all 18 of the United States intelligence agencies, all 32 of the United States Defense Department agencies, ordered them to compile every single piece of information they've got about the UFO phenomenon that they've ever had possession of since January 1st of 1945, to collect it all together and to make it available to the National Archives in the classified sections by October 20th of next month. Okay? Now, on the Senate side, we got them to order them to turn it over immediately on October 20th. And it went over to the House side to get approval. The House amended the language to say that they had to gather it all together and have it prepared in a digitized format where it can be searched and have an index which is searchable, and to have it prepared to be turned over to the National Archives by October 20th of 2024, and then turn it over as soon as possible. Now, as lawyers, you read language like that and you know crabbing language right away. That's just crabbing sideways. So what we've done is our institute, the Romero Institute, has instituted a new paradigm project, the New Paradigm Institute, which you'll find out about. You can click on, well, you just go to our site, newparadigminstitute.org, right? And you click onto this little gizmo here, and it'll give you all the there's more technical terms for it, whatever that thing is. Anyway, the bottom line is it'll start feeding you all kinds of information that we've put together now about this, because we are not going to depend upon Congress to be the ones that are going to reveal all of this. You know, and what we discovered now, I want to get before I have to step back here to let Sarah talk for a minute. Look at, bottom line is this. Bottom line is this. We are in the process of forcing disclosure, to force it upon the United States government that doesn't want to do this. And we have allies inside the United States national security state infrastructure because they're really worried. They're really worried because here's where, if that hasn't been serious as a heart attack yet, let me tell you that the doomsday clock that has been prepared by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists has just been reset because of the stuff in the Ukraine. It's been set now to 90 seconds before midnight. And a 24-hour clock is now moved all the way up to 90 seconds before midnight. This is the shortest fuse on the atomic clock that's existed in its entire history since 1947, when they created this doomsday clock. All right. And the fact is that the United States government has been responsible for moving into place major U.S. missiles, nuclear missiles, along the western boundary of the Soviet Union, or Russia. Yeah. And Russia, in response to this, has now Putin has ordered the training of his field commanders on the deployment and utilization of tactical nuclear weapons. Now, in order for them to retain control over the western sections of the Ukraine that they've accomplished so far. Most importantly, of course, Crimea, which is their access to the only warm water port in all of Russia, where their submarines come and go. Okay, so they aren't going to give this up, and they're willing to deploy tactical nuclear weapons in order to protect this. And so the problem is that the United States, there's a major that is being clothed in patriotism and support of liberty, and let's all help Ukraine because they want to have freedom and sovereignty that, you know, like anybody wants to have, you know, from the tyranny of Russia. I mean, it's this whole major propaganda campaign that's going on right now, which is trying to rationalize what's going on here on the part of the United States and the NATO countries, and they're putting Putin into a corner, and Putin has got nuclear weapons. All right, and so that what's happening is there's a major anxiety building inside the Pentagon that we are approaching a point of potential no return. And what they're concerned about, in our judgment, is that the UFO species are considering intervention because they have displayed the capacity to shut off all of our nuclear weapons. We have with us here tonight, actually, you know, that the captain who was a lieutenant at the time was in the U.S. Minuteman missile silo up in Montana back in 1967. That when the UFO came over and shut off 10 separately wired United States missiles there, okay? So that the bottom line is that we know from direct first-hand witnesses that the UFO people have the potential capacity to shut off our nuclear weapons. And they now have demonstrated they have the capacity to shut off our entire nuclear aircraft carriers. That they have risen now from beneath the sea, and they've shut off an entire United States nuclear aircraft carrier battle group. Completely shut off all of their electricity, shut off all of their propulsion and forward momentum, all of their electronic systems, and leave them dead in the water. Okay? Now that the bottom line is that this is causing deep anxiety on the part of the people in the Pentagon because they view that as a threat to our national security. Which you can understand from their limited, narrow perspective. But the bottom line is that what's happening now is that there's a major project that's underway in Washington, D.C. to set up a procedure, a set of protocols for what they call UFO controlled disclosure. That they have this 64-page bill I told you about that the Senate has passed. It's called, they're called the unidentified aerial phenomenon or unidentified anomalous phenomenon. They call them UAPs because they don't want to admit after 77 years of lying that UFOs are real. So they'll say, okay, UAP is real. Okay, they'll just call them something else. Okay, and so the bottom line is that they're engaged in a process now of trying to set up in that act called a UAP controlled disclosure campaign plan, pursuant to which the President of the United States will step by step release information about the UFOs over a 7-year period, okay? And that's going to authorize the President to withhold some of the information. What this really is trying to do is set up for the very first time a specific congressional authorization allowing them to continue to keep it secret, even though they've been lying to Congress for 77 years, pretending they don't have any information. Okay, so we need to understand it's a chess game that's going on right now. So it's absolutely essential that what we have is the public support, grassroots public support to press for full disclosure of the information that they have. And not partial information, not a limited, modified hangout position of, you know, the old adage inside the intelligence community is the best way to keep a secret is to pretend that you've revealed it. You know, and that they're talking about revealing just partial pieces of information, like how about acknowledging which 80% of all the people in the country already believe that UFOs are real. You know, and let's acknowledge that there's an extraterrestrial civilization, you know, and then see if that's going to satisfy the people, okay? Our job is to make sure that you're not satisfied. You're not satisfied with that kind of a pass-off, okay? That what we're going to do is demand to know the information, all right? And so we've organized this major project at the Romero Institute. The Romero Institute, as many of you know, is the progeny of the Christic Institute that we set up in Washington, D.C., you know, back in 1980. And we've now set up the Romero Institute that is housing this. And we're trying to invite you, Sarah's going to invite you, and how to participate in this whole program, that you can be part of the Citizens for Disclosure. Citizens for Disclosure is a major movement that's going to go on. That we're going to have a Citizens for Disclosure group in every single one of the 435 congressional districts. We're going to have one here in this congressional district. We want the young people to participate in this. We want people to volunteer to work with us, to help us in this major project. This has the greatest potential for raising the consciousness of people to realize that we have to get past this threat of thermonuclear war. We have to disarm. We have to disarm the nuclear warheads of all of the nuclear weapons in the world together in a collective effort. That's what we have to do. And it's not just to stave off the intervention on the part of the UFO people. What we want to do is open ourselves to a peaceful and cordial relationship with the extraterrestrial civilization. And we want Santa Cruz. We want Santa Cruz to be one of the leading communities in the country that is going to help lead this movement around the world. Okay? Sarah will tell you what all the different options are that you have, and then I can answer some questions if you'd like. Okay? Oh, you need that mic. Oh, that's right. Okay, here we go.
That's fantastic. I have notes here from this wonderful woman, Anna, who's our development manager, and she got ill, and we've all been having all these illnesses. Anyway, she got ill, so she's not here, but I have all of what I'm supposed to say, because she knows what it is we're all supposed to do technically. Here's what she's saying is, there's 4 ways that you can participate. 1, by becoming a Citizens for Disclosure here in Santa Cruz. 2, by taking simple online action towards disclosure on our website. 3, by supporting this vital work with a one-time donation. And 4, by becoming a member of NPI by joining onto our membership program at just $5 a month or more to gain increased access to events and information from our team, and in so doing providing the financial foundation that is necessary to make disclosure a reality. I mean, you all know this. We can't do this stuff without money, right? I mean, and we can't do it without skilled people. This is the kind of thing that we have to have. So we have to have staff. In addition to all the volunteers and everything, we have to have people. Okay, so what she's saying, she also wants me to tell you, we have an active volunteer base of 35 people in Santa Cruz who assist with campaigns out of our office, and an additional 113 who have joined on to the California Citizens for Disclosure team. Nationally, we have 753 volunteers in 41 states, but it all starts right here in Santa Cruz. This is where our headquarters is. And our Santa Cruz Citizens for Disclosure team is just starting out and needs more passionate volunteers to activate around UAP disclosure. So, she's saying, everyone pull out the sheet that was on your chair when you sat down. Do you have that? And take out your phones. You didn't have them. They were on the seats. Oh, I'm so sorry. Danny Paul? Do you have any more of those? Oh, good. Here he comes. So Danny Paul has these sheets if you don't have them and you want them. There he is. Okay, now, when you get your phone going, you can scan the QR code under Take Action that's on the piece of paper that you have, and you'll see a few ways that with just the touch of your fingers you can start to make a difference in uncovering the truth about UFOs, UAP. Here's another one over here. This is the action one over here. Take action for UFO. There's another one of those, as Danny says, gidget gadgets. And then this one is more the donation one. So one is action, one is donation. In case you don't have.
Tell people to use their camera to scan the code. A lot of people don't know that.
Yes. So you take your phone and you go to the camera, and then you just put the camera over the code, and it just automatically does it. You see a yellow button pop up, and then you hit the yellow button.
It's like a URL. It's a little yellow thing that has a URL.
Okay, the yellow thing pops up. It has a link to a URL to the website where all these wonderful things are there for you to participate. And these actions, there's different levels to it, right? I mean, if you go down, you'll see that our previous actions are there too, because we've been doing actions since November of last year, and it's always good to do all of them, because they're all going to the Congress. They're all signs to these people who have to get elected by us. We vote for them, or they don't get elected. They're signals to them. Oh, the populace is waking up. Oh, the people are waking up. They do want something done about this. And so we're just going to increase building the movement and the pressure onto the electeds that we voters have a right to put on them. And all right, so that's all in the action section of the site. Then it says, at the top of the page, I guess, it's in the action section, you will see the option to join or start a local citizen for disclosure team. And since we're headquartered here, it would be great if you want to participate. And we have we want to have a really strong team here. All right, so number 2, the second and simplest way you can plug in is take action on the NPI website. On that same page that you scan to, if you go into the website, you don't have to do all this here, obviously. I mean, you could do this tomorrow morning, but I have to do this because Anna told me to. Okay. So you can go below the Citizens for Disclosure section. You will see our current campaigns. Advocating for UAP whistleblowers. Danny crafted the most powerful whistleblower protection policy that's ever been presented to Congress. And it's sitting there. It's sitting there in the House right now, and we don't know what they're going to do with it. But it blew everybody's minds. It was strong and good, and it's specifically designed for UFO whistleblowers, for these kind of whistleblowers, and so one of the actions is advocating for that. Another one is urging Congress to pass UAP disclosure in 2024, furthering it. It's already passed in December of 2023, but They weakened it in the House, so then in 24 we're trying to have them strengthen it again. And petitioning the UN. We have a UN petition to establish a global UAP working group. And so these are all things you can take action. And that happened because we had people internationally contacting us and saying, we want something to do. Tell us what to do. We're not in the United States. So that's how that evolved. Then a third way to show your support is by donating. And also on the sheet, you can see a QR code under the word donate. Please scan that and take you to our donation form page where you can make a huge impact by contributing toward it financially. Please donate from the heart. Everything you do is going to make it possible for us to do more work. Now the final way to support this work, she says her personal favorite. She said, I might be biased since I manage this program, but it's to join on as a member of the New Paradigm Institute, the membership program. It's based on recurring giving, so that's a monthly or a yearly gift. Those kinds of gifts help us plan. Because then we know, well, we can project a certain amount of recurring gifts are coming in the next month. So we know, well, we can plan to spend that much money because we know it's coming. So she's encouraging people to join our membership program because these gifts are such a blessing. And there are some perks that go along with that. The perks are increasing your giving level. The perks increase as your giving level increases. Members at every level get a special monthly members newsletter and increased communications inside from the NPI leadership, as well as access to virtual events hosted by Danny Sheehan, who blew our minds tonight, so you don't want to miss those. We would love for you to be a part of this community. And all right, so then, one other thing. Danny and the New Paradigm Institute are hosting an intimate event this coming Tuesday night. And it's for people who are donors at higher levels. And if you would like to join those people, if you feel that you're in the category of giving that you can give a larger amount, she wants you, and you'd like to go, she'd like you to contact her. It's very easy to remember how to email her. It's Anna, A-N-N-A, at newparadigminstitute.org. And she's standing by, and she will send you an invitation, do whatever, and make sure that you're invited. And so that is basically what Anna's message is. And I thank you very much for listening.
Okay. Ready to go? Okay, can you hear me now? I can't hear you. Okay. Until that gets.
Test. By the way, we're 5 minutes away from transitioning over to Schlump's set. So get ready, everyone. There's going to be a transition experience we've got some circus acts and some drummers. It's going to be fun. So expect an explosion of energy here in about 5 minutes. But we'll give Danny the stage to just close it out in whatever way seems fitting to him.
But one thing I want to do is I made passing reference to the fact that Captain Salas was here. Bob, would you want to stand up here? Bob Salas is the guy that was in the U.S. Minuteman missile site when the UFO came over. I mean, if you want to actually touch a living legend who's part of the history of this, he has spent since 1967. He has spent thousands of hours trying to get people in Congress to pay attention to what they're talking about.
and he has ascended into a level of understanding where he's saying, look at, it's the threat of nuclear war is what the people in the UFOs are worried about. Okay, I mean, he's come all the way from inside the perimeters, at least, of the national security state into advocating, our support of the revelation of the UFOs so that they can help stop thermonuclear war on our planet. Okay, this is Captain Robert Salas. Okay, right here. Okay. Now, this is the Q&A period. We promised that we wouldn't run into the slum's time. So that I just wanted that you may have a couple burning questions you want to ask. I mean, other than how much can you give us? That's okay. You can keep that one private. Yes, go ahead, dear.
Given that Microsoft is coming back on the same line, you said
I can't quite hear you. You got to be a little bit louder here.
given that Microsoft is turning back on the 7 Mile Island, 3 Mile Island nuclear plant, you said that it's not good for electricity. They're using it to power AI. So do you feel like there's some other reason why they're doing that? Or?
No, what's happening is the advocates of nuclear power.
The question.
Here, the question is that there are efforts underway now to reopen the 3 Mile Island nuclear facility, arguing that they're not going to use it to generate power for the whole community or anything, but that they want to use it to power up a particular facility for AI. And what they're doing is the proponents of private nuclear power, who are desperately trying to revive that industry, are using the excuse of AI because they think everybody wants to have access to AI, and so therefore they may be able to use that as a nose under the tent to be able to get back at this. I don't think anything is more sinister than the simple greed on the part of the people that are that the AI people are going to try to buy one of these nuclear power plants to have an exclusive source of power for their AI. Is what's going on there, in my opinion. Yes. You have to be louder than that, Derek. Yeah.
Did the guy in 1945 say what the aliens look like now on the telecast?
Yes. The question is, did your Corso give indication of what the beings looked like in 1945? They were in fact the small grays. They were the small 3.5 feet tall, large head, dark eyes. The fact of the matter is that you can get the average 5th grader now in the country to draw a picture of an ET. So I mean that we've been effective in trying to get the information through to people about what's really going on, but the American government has still kept officially asserting that it isn't true, that this is all fictional stuff. But the bottom line is that's what they looked like. Yes, there was another. Yes.
What do you make of Jacques Vallée's intense skepticism of the extraterrestrial, from far away hypothesis, in favor of the idea that in fact somehow they've always been here since the fall, and in fact they're hyperdimensional?
I want to be careful not to get crossways with Jacques Vallée. The question is, what about Jacques Vallée's assertion that we shouldn't so easily think that the primary ET phenomenon is in fact ET, that he thinks it may be extra dimensional. He's actually noted, his quote is that if in fact it turns out that the UFO phenomenon is nothing more than an extraterrestrial civilization, he's going to be disappointed. I don't find it that disappointing, but you'll notice that Jacques goes into all kinds of stuff about elves and fairies and gnomes and leprechauns and all that, and that they wander off into this other entirely different realm of mythology, and and then they get into the Jungian dimensions of this. That Carl Jung actually suggested that UFOs were a photoplasmic projection into actual material manifestation of a deep-set psychic fear on the part of our human species about our future. there's a scientific word for that in psychology is bullshit. That whole thing. That they're all just desperately trying to avoid the obvious. You know. Now that's not to say that there are not other phenomena going on. Whatever this character Bigfoot is that's running around, or whatever else is going on, the simple reality is that the evidence of an existence of extraterrestrial intelligence life is absolutely overwhelming. And the evidence that the UFOs are piloted by extraterrestrial beings is overwhelming. Okay, and so that what we're trying to do is deal with that issue and the repercussions of that issue and what their role is in trying to stop thermonuclear war on our planet. It's a fairly prosaic agenda that we have.
How likely is it that other countries have similar programs with assets they've collected?
Oh yeah, the question is how likely is it that other nations such as China or Russia have similar programs? It's like virtually 100%. That they clearly are trying to do the same kind of thing. But the reality is the United States is the overwhelming superpower of the world for the last 75 years. And so that we've had a huge amount of time and energy put into this type of research and investigations, etc., the capture of these vehicles. Now, this is the first thing that I talked with Gorbachev about, that Sarah was the executive director of the State of the World Forum that Gorbachev and Secretary of State James Baker set up after World War II. So we were deeply involved in that whole program of trying to figure out a new paradigm for our world at the end of the Cold War. And so I got to meet with Gorbachev, and the first thing I asked him about was the UFO issue. It was very clear that they'd been interested in it. I talked about this also with Dr. Zhenzhou Jing. She is the head of the Chinese Academy of Social Science, the Science and Technology Division. They're extraordinarily interested in this. And I'll point out something that I hadn't touched upon earlier, and that is this, is that it turns out that these UFO vehicles are navigated by telepathy, by the telepathy of the actual pilot. And it turns out that the craft themselves are made of a material which is a high quality AI type material that actually has dendrites in it. That you've probably heard about the research that's being done now to put human stem cells into computers to generate neural pathways in computers right now. And you add another couple billion years of research that a civilization has had that is from a star system that is 10 billion years old instead of just 4.5 billion years old, and you'll understand what we're dealing with here. That these craft, some of them are sentient, and that they're navigated by telepathy, so that the scale of technology that we're talking about here is so extraordinarily beyond anything that we have, is what's caused to make it clear to all the people in the Pentagon, this stuff is extraterrestrial. This comes from a deeply ancient tradition of billions of years of research that we have not yet done. Okay, so that just so you'll know, let's do one more and then.
Are you concerned about the intervention of the aliens to stop nuclear warfare? Is there a downside to that?
Well, yes. The question is, do we have any concerns about an extraterrestrial civilization intervening in our affairs, even if it's for the purposes of stopping a thermonuclear war? I'll start out by suggesting that almost anything is better than thermonuclear war, but not everything is. So the bottom line is, one of the objectives at the Institute is trying to figure out how to insert the American citizens into this dialogue, so we can be involved in trying to figure out how we can salvage as much of our own agency over our own decision-making processes as possible. If in fact there's going to be eventually there's obviously going to be a point in time when we encounter officially the extraterrestrial civilization. And that one of the major threats is that we'll be absorbed in some way where our agency, which is so primitive, analogous to the small indigenous tribe in the 1950s in Papua New Guinea that didn't know there was a whole world outside, but the bottom line is that we want to be able to preserve as much of our own agency, our ability to make decisions for ourselves and to exercise sovereign authority over our own decision-making process as possible. But that doesn't include authorizing 1%, 1/10 of 1% of our human population to try to control the world the way they're doing now and bring us to a thermonuclear war. That's unacceptable. Okay? All right. So thank you very much. We'll get. Okay. So look, we've got to let Slim get busy here. Okay.
Thanks for sticking with this incredibly interesting discussion, everybody. So Phoenix, you can go ahead and trigger Simon Stilts and the crew. We're gonna migrate into the large theater, but it's gonna take 15 minutes. There's no rush, so please enjoy the intermission. Use the lobby. There are some refreshments out here. Use the